I'm George Galloway, and I present كلمة on Mayadeen television. Here we are in London. I speak my words freely, either in Parliament, on television, here on the streets of London. كلمة means free word. That's what I speak. So كلمة is a two-way conversation. Check it out on Mayadeen television. Welcome to كلمة with me, George Galloway, on Mayadeen television, coming to you from London, talking about the special relationship. I'm joined by a group of distinguished experts, one or two enthusiastic amateurs like me. Britain has always had a special relationship with the United States of America. Although I used to say it was a bit like the special relationship between Miss Lewinsky and President Clinton. Unequal, one-sided, with the junior partner always on their knees. Tony Blair asked me to stop saying that, and I did for a time, but it became irresistible. Until the moment in the London School of Economics when I returned it to my script, only to have it pointed out that Miss Lewinsky was in the audience as a student of the London School of Economics. Of course, Mr. Blair's relationship to first Bill Clinton and then George W. Bush, he was nothing if not promiscuous, Mr. Blair, was extremely close. The question is, will the relationship between the two blonde bombshells, Boris Johnson and Donald J. Trump, turn that special relationship even more intimate? Certainly warm and fuzzy, if the opening chapters are anything to go by. What will that mean, if so, for Britain? What will it mean for the rest of the world? Is the Anglo-American alliance going to join up, policing the world with the British side as the president's brain? The president's brain otherwise being missing. Donald Trump can't string 5 sentences together. Boris Johnson can do so in Latin. So it may very well be that the long-held British ambition to be Greece to America's Rome might be about to be achieved. Let's take as our first contribution one of Britain's most distinguished commentators, journalists and campaigners, Mark Wadsworth. Mark, are you viewing this tango between the British and the American leaderships with any anxiety?
I certainly am, and I think it's wonderful, you know, the way that the hilarity that you referred to a moment ago is epitomised by the baby blimp, which has now travelled to the other side of the Atlantic, and it's commonplace. But joking aside, it is a very dangerous time we live in. We've got the baby Trump in London, in a very subservient position. Don't forget he's American-born, so he can take...
In fact, he only gave up his American citizenship because the tax authorities wanted a share on a profit of a house that he sold.
So you see the sort of promiscuity that you referred to. And so he's got an escape route, like the likes of Rees-Mogg. They're all trustafarians. They have trust funds, they have overseas assets, offshore assets, and they won't be hit hard by a hard Brexit. They'll have escape routes to get their medicines, to get their supplies, to get their caviar, to get their champagne, while the rest of us suffer.
I'm not so sure we can't do without caviar and champagne myself, but let me put this to you. Donald Trump may be a blimp, but actually he's much less dangerous than the presidents that went before. Certainly fought a lot fewer wars, killed many fewer people, so far at least. So why is it, Adam Gary, that people are uniquely afraid of Donald Trump? After all, his predecessor might have been achingly cool, but he killed a lot of folks.
Well, I have to quote the man himself. Very fake news. We live in an age where image comes quickly and decisions and opinions are formed on the basis of that image. There's a lot to like or hate about Donald Trump. Some people like me like some things and dislike others. For most people, because of the overriding influence of the fake media, have to use that term again, he's someone who's a bit Marmite. One either loves all of it or hates all of it, but no human being, let alone especially a politician, should be viewed in that zero-sum game. If we're going to get ahead as a society, economically, politically, pragmatically, we've got to be able to compartmentalize these things. And as for a no-deal Brexit, my view is this. If I went down to postcodes, which I know all too well, and if I were to be of a certain devious mindset, I could order humans trafficked from other countries, drugs trafficked from other countries, counterfeit goods trafficked from other countries, and I could get it all within either 3 hours in some cases or 24 in another. And people are saying that that country, the fifth largest in the world, won't be able to survive, to buy things that are imported after Brexit. It's just nonsense. If anything, people are buying too much because we're too lax about enforcing existing customs rules, and the human trafficking and drug epidemic are just two such examples of that. Is Boris going to do anything about that? Well, we'll have to wait till after the 31st.
Well, Boris Johnson is a clever man, at least a well-educated man, the cleverest fool in Christendom, I call him. Will he attempt to make the strategy for Donald Trump? Will he try and be Greece to America's Rome?
I think that the way to gauge this special relationship, and the Lewinsky metaphor is the best for so many reasons, is how do they get on when the two occupants of the White House and number 10 Downing Street, respectively, have different personages, different personalities and personas. And we have some very recent examples of this. There was Gordon Brown, a man whose idea of a good night out is reading some Presbyterian literature and saying how it's totally compatible with socialism. And then you have Barack Obama, who, when he wasn't going to war, was doing something much more pleasant, like singing Motown songs on the Jimmy Fallon late night television show. Then we've got Bush and Blair, who on the surface of it, you've got sort of Mr. Glib and a man whose tongue is so long that the only thing it's good for is tripping over. And yet they got on. And then we had May and Trump, and you couldn't get people more different than that. You know, she was someone who couldn't even grab Brexit with two hands, and Donald Trump's famous for bragging about grabbing something else with something else. Now, though, you have two men who seem to be very in sync. So the question is, what can this special relationship do? I don't think the wars are going to change one way or the other. Harold Wilson was the last British Prime Minister to even attempt, and he succeeded in respect to Vietnam, of resisting the American magnet pulling a post-Suez Britain to war. But since then, I think it's rather a bit more dismal in my estimation. I think when America goes to war, Britain will follow, and the question is a matter of degree. Will it be with a leg between one's tails, or will it be Tony Blair, who frankly was talking about Iraq-style wars in 1999 when George Bush was recovering from his previous ailments, including draft dodging and exciting himself.
I remember he had an accident with a pretzel once. Thanks for that. Jerry Downing, you're a man of the far left. I suppose you're against the special relationship per se, are you?
I am, of course, against the special relationship, but I think we have to take a hard look at where the world is going at the moment. The election of Donald Trump and now the elevation of Boris Johnson has pushed the world closer to World War III than we've been for a long time. We've seen that Trump is pushing the war against Iran. We've seen that Donald Trump is pushing the war against Venezuela. We've seen, very oddly, that he's very fond of the man in North Korea, which is...
He gets beautiful letters.
a beautiful letter, which is a very peculiar thing, while at the same time he absolutely hates the Cubans. So there's a little bit of a reason there, in my view, that's because...
Isn't it all just bluster, though, Jerry? I mean, you say war. But he not only has he not gone to war with these countries, in the case of Iran, he ordered the bombers back.
Well, apparently the story is that he ordered the bombers back because he got information that his thing that was shot down,
the drone, yeah.
The drone that was shot down shouldn't have been shot down, but the missile had got through the defense system, and apparently the message from that was if he sent the bombers, the missiles would get through those defense systems as well. He had to hold off.
Well, maybe so.
Because
But, I mean, other presidents would have carried on.
Well, maybe they would, but Donald Trump is such a Dr. Strangelove. He's not entirely rational, but he does want, and he is pushing for global warfare. He did, as we have mentioned previously, he did threaten the Afghan nation with entire annihilation. So he's not above doing that. In my view, he's a far more dangerous president than Barack Obama or George Bush. Yeah. I think he's.
See, I just don't buy that.
To the edge of
I honestly think it's the opposite. Beware the suave and quiet man walking around killing people whilst crooning Tamla Motown songs. Barack Obama increased the number of wars that the US was involved in. He ordered far more drone strikes. He killed a lot of folks. And so I argue against the exceptionality of Bush. It seems to me that all of these American presidents are involved in the same thing, maintaining American hegemony in the world, extending it if possible. But within that, actually, Trump genuinely has killed fewer people. He's blustered a lot more, but that, you could say, is his personality, his way of brokering deals.
No, because what he's doing is he's pitching to the far right. He's pitched to the far right, has succeeded in getting those two mass shooting incidents in Texas and Idaho.
There were far more mass shooting incidents under Barack Obama than there have been under Donald Trump.
We're only just starting, because what is behind his ideology is the far right are actually pushing against him. And are organising against it. If you take what happened in Alabama just a few weeks ago, that woman was shot in the stomach 5 times by the other woman in a fight over a man. And then the judge came along and said, well, she was responsible for the death of her own baby because she was pregnant and she lost the baby. She started the fight. So she was now charged with beginning a fight where the other woman shot her the woman that shot her 5 times was immediately released. Now, this is a form of American fascism. That's the kind of stuff you would get. And 8 states in the 8 Jim Crow states have now practically totally banned abortion. In the United States. This is a very, very dangerous development of far-right ideology, which is threatening Donald Trump from the right.
Tell me where you stand. Are you with Jerry that Trump is the most dangerous thing in the world today, more dangerous than his predecessors? Or do you agree with Adam and me that actually some of the things that he has said and done are no doubt utterly deplorable, but some of the things he has not done when others would have done them is what we have to weigh in the balance. Mark, you know American presidents well. We are of d'un certain age. We've seen them all. He's no doubt more vulgar, more crass, less articulate than almost all of the presidents that we've seen. But at the end of the day, where's the beef for the argument? I mean, if the beef for the argument is a woman getting cleared in a court case in Alabama, that's not much evidence so far as I'm concerned.
I tend to agree with you. If you look at his original creed, this is before he got elected, it was to make America more isolationist, to withdraw from foreign wars.
I'm in favour of that, aren't you?
Yes, indeed. And so I think that that is the basis of what he believes in. Make America great again. Close in, you know, create walls. So he'll give it all the bombast and the saber rattling, but I think he's less inclined to be interventionist.
So far, that's the case. I mean, it's not even an opinion that he has physically, violently attacked fewer places and fewer people than his predecessor did in his first 3 years.
Well, that's right. I mean, Barack Obama was a disgrace. And a lot of black America, the intellectuals, the radicals, turned against him because of those drone attacks on innocent civilians. In fact, you'll recall the Woodward and Bernstein, who exposed Watergate and got rid of Nixon, called him out as the war president and wrote a book about it. And lots of people said that the Oslo Nobel Committee were wrong to have given him the Nobel Peace Prize before it even started off.
Yeah, they were certainly premature. Let's take the young man next to you. Where do you stand on this, sir?
Thank you, George. I think I'm with yourself and Adam on this one, actually. And it comes back to what the gentleman next to me was saying, is, you know, for all the sort of bluster and sensationalism that sort of feeds his supporter base and sort of feeds the media around Trump, be it positive or, you know, negative, sort of in the liberal sort of media. Actually, there's been nothing of substantial damage that he's particularly done compared, say, to Obama and other presidents. And with the two of them, I actually think, you know, the special relationship could deepen in a sense because they are both very similar in that respect.
Are you in favor? Yeah, I mean, it seems to me obvious we have a special relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't do much dancing to Slovakian music in my youth, and I don't often sit down to watch an Albanian movie.
Why not?
Perhaps I should. Maybe I've been missing out. We have a common language. We're divided by that common language, as Oscar Wilde said. We have a common language. We have many commonalities in culture and a lot of history between us. It's natural, isn't it, that we should have a special relationship with the United States?
Absolutely, yes. And, you know, the two of them do seem to go very well together, certainly compared to May. I think one of the interesting things to see will be, you know, if for all, you know, Trump's sort of fake news to the media and Johnson do or die with Brexit, is if we are forced into some sort of snap election in the UK as to if Boris Johnson isn't then returned as Prime Minister and we end up with Corbyn. I think that would be a very interesting dynamic because they are two very different individuals with
that would indeed be fascinating.
Different characteristics.
Yes, that would be a special relationship of a wholly different kind.
Yes.
But you know, Theresa May held his hand in the Rose Garden because he has a fear of steps. No doubt why he couldn't go and fight in Vietnam. Oh no, that was bone spurs. The relationship endures, doesn't it? For me, I want a special relationship with the United States. I want it with many countries. The question is, do we take orders from them? Now, as was alluded earlier, Harold Wilson refused to take orders. He refused to send British forces to fight in Vietnam. In fact, at one stage, President Johnson asked him to send bagpipers, Scottish bagpipers, a regiment of them, or a battalion of them, to at least play the American forces out when they went to kill the Vietnamese. But Wilson refused that. If this special relationship requires us to eat chlorinated chicken, to coin one of the phrases, I don't know what chlorinated chicken is, and I don't even eat chicken, so I'm not going to eat it whether it's chlorinated or not. But if it requires us to go to war in the Persian Gulf when we otherwise would not have wanted to, And that is already beginning to happen.
Yes.
The official British policy is against Trump on Iran.
Yes.
The official British policy is in support of the nuclear deal with Iran. And yet we've ended up
Yes.
with ships there, and if there's a war, we'll be in it. That's the question, isn't it? What will be the nature of the special relationship?
Absolutely, and it's an incredibly odd situation that we find ourselves in. I think if we continue under Johnson and, he meets Trump and that continues to deepen, then we could end up in a situation where, yes, we are taking orders from the United States, but coming back to, I think, what you were saying earlier, I think what Adam was saying, Johnson, Trump does seem to be opting for that more isolationist approach, despite all the sort of bluster to the media and all the, we're going to do this and that, and aren't they terrible? Again, there's been no concrete action, particularly compared to others.
Well, if he's about to pull out of Afghanistan in September, which is what we hear, that's a good thing. Personally, I take the view that many British people did when the US were here in the run-up to D-Day in 1943 and 44, that the US are overpaid, oversexed and over here. And that was the problem. Madam, let's hear from a female voice. Go ahead.
Deborah Hobson, co-chair of Grassroots Black Left. I think it's a sad situation that we have to sort of console ourselves with the fact that Donald Trump hasn't been an instigator of wars internationally, because if we think of ourselves as global humanitarians, I think we should have real concern about what's happening with regards to the rhetoric that he has provided and emboldened the far right in the US, and the many casualties there will be from that, particularly obviously people of colour, black people, Hispanics and so forth. So while we may say Barack Obama and a few other presidents have started wars, we have to really look at what will be the implosion of terror in America because of what he stands for.
Well, yes, but Bill Clinton was just about as liberal, maybe less than Jack Kennedy, but just about as liberal as any US Democratic president has ever been. And he imprisoned a small nation of black people in the United States. So again, I'm arguing against this exceptionalism about Trump. In fact, it was said of Bill Clinton that he was the first black president because he thought and acted and talked like a black man. But that didn't stop the policies that he had. Racist cops have been gunning down black people in America under all presidents of all colours. Much more of this after the break. You're watching كلمة with me, George Galloway, on Mayadeen television, coming from London, talking about the special relationship between Boris Johnson and Donald Trump, the blonde bombshells. Earlier, we took the كلمة camera onto the streets of London to see what the people thought. Let's take a look.
Do you think Boris Johnson will survive if he fails to deliver Brexit by October 31st?
I don't think so, no.
My feeling is that if he doesn't take affirmative action and come to some kind of decision, then he will not survive as Prime Minister.
It's difficult to see how he would. The way the whole government's been made up has been people that seem to have been committed to leave from the beginning.
I don't know, it's really hard to say. Everything's all over the place at the minute. Who knows what's going to happen? But it does seem that a vote of no confidence is gaining traction, so it might happen.
I don't know whether he will survive at all in the long term. I would expect that he won't.
Looking at the destiny that David Cameron and Theresa May had followed, I believe it's not possible that he will still be in power if he fails to deliver Brexit.
Do you think Boris Johnson will create a new kind of so-called special relationship with the US, given his existing relationship with Donald Trump?
Well, I think it will be an important relationship because of the situation that we're in with losing the close links to the EU. But I don't know how special it will be for Britain. It might be probably going to be a better deal for America than it is for Britain.
Yes, I think he will, but I'm not at all sure he would be successful because I think the US puts US first, and I think he'll have a difficult time getting a good deal with the US. So I wouldn't hold out much hope of him being successful.
He has obviously a former relationship with Donald Trump, and I feel that Britain's ongoing relationship will continue. However, it's going to be slightly different given the news with Donald Trump, most recently, and since he began his term as president. I think that it's going to be not without controversial matters.
I don't think he's going to have a choice because we'll be looking for any takers we can get. So I think definitely with the US.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. His selection of his cabinet, if that's anything to go by, is, possibly more Trump-aligned. If that's one way to put it.
Given that it's a minority government at the moment, do you think a general election is inevitable sometime soon?
I think he'll do everything he can to stop that from happening, but I think, yes, the majority is against him, and it does look pretty likely that that will happen as well.
I feel that this is the only way forward now.
As I hear from my British friends, they say they would prefer a general election to happen.
Yes, I do. I don't think you can carry on very long with a legislative programme if you've only got a majority of one.
Very interesting opinions there. Quite a bit of scepticism about whether Boris Johnson will survive for very long, and therefore this discussion may be otiose. Let's go to the back of the room. Gentlemen at on the back benches. We don't just like to hear from the front benchers here. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, my name is Joshua from London. I'm just going off a little bit off the tangent here, just with Obama and Trump, okay, and how they were in relation to one another. Just as they were like polar opposites in terms of personality, they were basically an inversion in relation to how they handled foreign policy and domestic policy, because Trump's domestic policy, scrapping Obamacare, pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, yes, it's an international treaty, but it's a national obligation for the United States internally. That was progressive legislation Obama, introduced, and Trump got rid of that, and that was really bad because 30 million Americans risk losing their health insurance. But at least, as you say, Trump, even though he's rattling the saber with Iran, he hasn't instigated anything yet, all by himself, any in terms of foreign conflicts. So unlike Obama, who started Libya, Syria, and Yemen, in a way, Obama and Trump's foreign and domestic policies are an inversion of one another. Do you see what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
But on the issue of Boris Johnson and Donald J. Trump, it's important to remember that Trump is comparatively more reconciliatory to Russia, or to Putin anyway, to the regime.
Well, half of America believes he's working for President Putin.
Yeah, I know. And Boris Johnson, despite having some Russian ancestry, is definitely not pro-Russian. I mean,
Yeah, well, not today. He was yesterday, metaphorically, and might be again tomorrow. Boris Johnson bears the impression, like a sofa, of the last person that sat upon him. It's only 3 years ago that Boris Johnson, in the columns of the Daily Telegraph, was calling for an alliance with Russia against the fanatic extremists in Syria. He wanted us to go to war alongside Russia. Let's hear from the gentleman next to you.
Trump has invested a staggering extra £80 billion plus into the military war machine. This, where it's being used at the moment, is irrelevant because it looks like it will be used to a staggering effect. And let's say he doesn't conduct more war and horrors upon this world, that is still a direct attack on the working class in America itself.
It's welfare for capitalism, isn't it?
Exactly.
He's rewarding the military-industrial complex supporters with more and more orders.
On the back of the working class who have no power or capabilities to be able to interact with that in a political level. This is an attack on the American people. Trump is raging right now a vicious, sadistic war on America, its people, and they are suffering on the infrastructure, health, education, and all the things communities need to grow and respect each other, which is the division which he's sowing. And it will bloom and blossom into horror if Trump keeps persevering with this program of... Thank you.
Again, I say no change there then, because all the previous presidents did the same. Let's take the lady at the front here. Yes, ma'am.
Great show, George.
Thank you.
My name is Claudia Bryan. I'm from South Africa. I actually knew Trump back in the 90s. I used to work for him in a capacity of running the Miss World pageant.
Aha.
So I do know the man, and I will say he's got softer with age. Will the special relationship continue with the UK, with Boris, is the question. I believe it will, and I'll tell you why. Because as we know that Mr. Blair was a poodle for another president, so will Boris Johnson be the poodle for Donald Trump.
No, well, we can't let you off with just that. You must share some anecdotes. When you say he's become softer with age, quite a few people shuddered because if this is the soft Donald Trump, what was the hard one like?
The hard Donald Trump was a failed businessman, let's be honest, and a very grumpy man that used to beat his wife, Ivana, in front of us in the hotels. So that is the man I knew. And I think he's got softer. Perhaps Melania's had an effect. I'm not sure. Perhaps. But I would say that one would have to be rather careful of the man. I think that he will often play for a stage, but what's going on in his mind is very different to what he's telling us.
He does seem extraordinarily capricious, capable of... well, let's take North Korea. He threatened absolute nuclear Armageddon before he threatened Afghanistan, he threatened to wipe North Korea off the map. He's not very good at geography. He doesn't know that if you wipe North Korea off the map, you're actually affecting quite a few other countries nearby, some of them quite important. But he did threaten that, and yet now he seems to be in the throes of a love affair with the leader of North Korea.
And also, as you say about Iran, he did not push Iran. So there is a little softer side, perhaps, that's come out.
Well, that's very interesting, I must say. Gentleman there in the front row.
Hi, thank you. My name is Gareth. I'm terrified of Trump precisely because he is so capricious. Yes, he has a certain element of humanity that those who are brought up in an institutional national security framework do not have. They've all been hardened and inured to the idea of dropping bombs on people far away. Trump is a much simpler person, and he can easily have an emotional, moral response to that prospect that those institutional people won't. But he is also so random that he could easily turn Tehran into a glowing crater just because it's what he felt that day. And so I am absolutely afraid of having him in power, and I don't think that this will come to any good.
Well, look, the line I took at the time on the night, having predicted for more than a year that Trump would win, was that I'm not happy Donald Trump is the president of the United States, but I'm very happy Hillary Clinton isn't. I'm absolutely convinced that Hillary Clinton would have embroiled the United States in possibly several wars by now. And the point you made is a very profound one, because they are all from within the bubble of the national security state, the military-industrial complex, and so on. They are deeply inured by it, whereas Trump was a reality TV star and organizer of Miss World, which at the very least means you haven't spent the last 25 years going around the world murdering people.
Indeed, but under Trump, Trump's dropped have gone from 1 per 28 minutes under Obama to 1 to 12 minutes. And then in many ways, the national security apparatus has its way with Trump because he will always bow to the will of the army. He defers to generals. He admires generals like no other group of people. And it's all about strength. I mean, strong is his favorite word. If you can just persuade him that giving the military more bombers and more bombs will make them strong and make him look strong, then he'll sign it.
Strong and stable genius, I think he described himself. The gentleman at the end here.
Hi there, everybody. My name's Winston Hall. I'm from South Africa, now living in Kent. Thank you for a wonderful show, George.
Thank you.
I would put it that the United States is of course the one and only superpower. But one has to consider that it's not run by a president who's lost his mind. Back in the 70s, Nixon had what he called the madman doctrine. For his negotiations with North Vietnam, he argued that you want people to think that I could go mad at any time and just bomb Hanoi and escalate the war and invade China. It's a clever tactic to keep people off their toes while you actually deal with the quiet diplomacy that needs to be done. We have an increasingly internet-centered world, instant needs. People need to know instantly what's going on all the time. Diplomacy can't be dealt with instantly. It takes time, it takes quiet, and it takes people to sit down and deal things reasonably. In order to play to that, to keep people wanting the information they want, you will bluster. You will hate this person, like this dislike that. It's to keep people
Or even
getting their
sit
information.
on Twitter.
Or even sit on Twitter, his Twitter is very amusing. However, because the United States is the one and only superpower, it also has the responsibility, which it is aware of and has always been aware of, that it is the great stabilizing force in the world. American influence spreads throughout the world from even something as simple as a Coca-Cola or a McDonald's. Whether people like that or not is down to whether they want to buy a Coca-Cola or a McDonald's. But it has been available to people. American TV, American literature, all of these things are available to people. If they want them, they can have them. If they don't want them, they don't have to. Nobody's forced to it.
But fewer and fewer people are. I mean, American soft power has never been, in my lifetime, never been weaker. Fewer people go to McDonald's, fewer people drink Coca-Cola, fewer people are fixated. When I grew up, everyone wanted to be an American. What was the song? There was a musical, I Want to Be an American. Not many people sing that song anymore. However, the point you make is one I've been making myself. Crazy Nixon was a deliberate negotiating strategy for the Nixon White House.
And it actually worked in order to exit Vietnam.
Well,
because
it
the
may have
fact that
helped.
North Vietnam, their leaders were never sure whether he might actually decide to bomb the dams and flood Hanoi, destroy the oil in Haiphong Harbor, invade China, escalate the war into a further invasion of Cambodia or Laos. They were not sure of that. And because of that, and because he was talking to the Soviet Union at the time, which was the sole major supplier for communist North Vietnam, they were not sure if he might get the taps turned off. If North Vietnam lost all their military supplies from the Soviet Union, at the same time he's doing ping-pong diplomacy quietly with China, all the supplies that North Vietnam needs to continue their war might be lost. America might switch gears and say, we will actually now, because we've cut off your supplies, we will now free the people of North Vietnam from communism.
Well,
that was a possibility.
Anyway,
they didn't know
Crazy
that.
Nixon was a thing. Crazy Trump might be
Is another thing.
Crazy Boris, you can say, is one way of characterizing his approach to Brexit at the moment, isn't it? Isn't he doing the same thing?
Yeah.
If you don't make a deal with me, I'm out of here without a deal, and the devil can take the consequences. So,
but at the
perhaps
same
we're
time,
seeing
you
a
talk
pattern
quietly
here.
behind the scenes. While the bluster goes on and people focus on the bluster, they don't look at the quiet diplomacy that goes on behind the scenes. It's important a lot of the time that when you're dealing with diplomacy and you're trying to get people who don't necessarily want to talk to each other to solve a problem, you have to do give and take, which their supporters would not accept if you actually kept bringing it out publicly, this is what we're giving up. But once the deal's done, no agreement ever comes to the situation of everybody's entirely happy. You've got to give and take in an agreement to get an agreement.
Okay.
If you do it quietly, you can solve it.
Just in this internet age, let me let you know that the US is not the only world superpower. This gentleman over here, as they certainly find out if they invaded China today.
Well, it's more a question, really, George, actually, because, going back to the Vox pop, lots of people didn't seem that certain that Boris Johnson would remain our Prime Minister for that long. But then also, of course, if the special relationship is to deepen with the two of them, obviously Trump comes up for re-election next year. And there's a question, of course, over whether he'll win a second term. Now, I personally believe he probably will. The Democrats seem incredibly divided on who they're going to choose as a candidate. And when there's division, that doesn't usually then result in a united campaign. But those on the streets didn't seem all that optimistic either about Johnson. And I know one of them in particular who seemed particularly in favour of the European Union is in fact one of my neighbours and a Liberal Democrat councillor.
Oh, well, full disclosure.
Indeed, so for our international audience, a very pro-European party. So should Councillor Cobbett be watching, hello.
Very good. Mark, on that point, the Brexit hour is almost upon us. I think it's a given, as certainly the public there thought, that if we don't leave on the 31st of October, that Johnson's probably a goner. If we do, he's still only got a majority of one, although police action is imminent against yet another Tory MP for Donald Trump-style behaviour on a personal level. That one might disappear. There's already one. I'm just giving you news of another one. The British political scene is extremely fluid, volatile, but so is the US. It's very soon to the American presidential election. If the Democrats choose, in my view, the person they should have chose the last time, in which case we wouldn't be having this discussion, they could beat him, couldn't they?
Oh, yes. And you can see what's lining up. You've got Kamala Harris, but we all know her record in California, locking up black people the same colour as her. All right, she called out Joe Biden for his record in terms of civil rights, and it wasn't a great one. And then you've got Elizabeth Warren, who's looking good and, could battle Bernie Sanders for the Liberal position. But it isn't looking great. I tend to agree with my colleague on the right here. Not on the right of politics, of course, just on my right.
You think that Trump
could come up through the middle, and that is the problem. And it's looking like, he's already started his electioneering for 2020. The rhetoric, the far-right rhetoric, the playing to the white supremacists. Oh, yes, he might have gone to El Paso and Dayton and made the mea culpa, calling out the white supremacists. But his dog whistle tactics are there on the stump. You see what he says.
Sure.
Once he starts loosening his mouth to those redneck supporters, send them back, the 4 black women in Congress. Outrageous racism. And not going back on that at all. So it's going to be quite a racist campaign, and that concerns me. And it concerns me about Boris Johnson as well, with his record about black people in Africa being pickaninnies, which is an extremely abusive term about black children and their watermelon smiles. So you've got 2 racists on both sides of the Atlantic playing to their racist constituency, and it's going to get very, very dirty and nasty. And you saw what happened in El Paso, you saw what happened in Dayton, and the mass murders as a result of that sort of hate speech.
Yes, Jerry, you want back in on that?
Right. It's just that we cannot forget what's happening on the Mexican border. What's happening on the Mexican border is absolutely shocking. There are concentration camps there now for children. There are children that are taken from their parents in the most brutal fashion. Now, of course, you can say that Obama did some of this, but he never did it in such an open and blatant way. He never pitched to the far right like Trump is pitching and like Boris Johnson is pitching. This is a pitch to the far right that will unleash forces that they won't be able to control. Maybe they're only doing it to get themselves elected. But once these people get their head, I'm talking about the Ku Ku Klux Klan and other people, and the man that fired the gun in Texas, they are obviously swallowing whole. Now, this is an immediate threat to the whole civil society. I'm saying it's a threat of fascism, and I'm saying you don't want to ignore what happened in Alabama and what's happening in those Jim Crow southern states on the question of abortion. It's really appalling that women are going to be driven back before the situation you had with Roe versus Wade. That's a really appalling scenario, and a essential part of fascism is the oppression of women, and that is definitely what's coming.
Adam, what's your view on the upcoming presidential election in the United States?
I think Trump's going to win by a relatively comfortable margin by the standards of the last 15 or even 20 years, and I think there's several reasons for it. I think that America has got tired of the post-Cold War humbug, and Trump has blown the cobwebs away. And one thing where I think I differ from some of the views being expressed is that no matter who shakes the tree, it's the same fruit that falls off. And for far too long, this complacent political tree being eaten by the termites of war and the termites of a stupid monetary system and fiscal mismanagement and social deprivation, it needs a good shaking. And whoever shakes it, the fruit will fall off and it will allow new fruit to grow. And it will be up to people of the next generation, people living in the present, to determine what comes next. Donald Trump is a transitional figure. And I think most people in America, especially in those key swing states that determine elections according to the Electoral College process, they want this intermediate stage to continue more because they know that everything that came before has failed everyone, from the left, right, and everything that exists in between. And that's why people like Trump and like Johnson are now in leadership positions. The dam has burst. Failure after failure after failure for decades has led to the fact that people are now saying, let's get the tree shakers in rather than the people who just pretend as though the tree isn't going to fall down at any moment.
He said he would drain the swamp. And Johnson, on the other hand, says we're going to take back control. But in fact, albeit from the edges of the political class, the ruling class in both countries, the beneficiaries of Donald Trump's draining of the swamp have been the same old, haven't they? It's been tax cuts for the ultra-rich. The expenditure on infrastructure has been nothing like that which these swing states, these Rust Belt states, had been led to expect. He's disappointed a lot of people. And if the Democrats bring forward someone who more believably can say, I really will shake the tree. He said he would shake the tree. I'll really shake it. He said he'd drain the swamp, but I'll really drain it. He could still lose, couldn't he?
If, and that if is just not going to happen. The Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, are so corrupt. Trump is now in a position where so long as the economy doesn't totally collapse and so long as he's able to not go to war between now and November of 2020, I frankly don't see how he could lose.
And what's your prediction for Boris Johnson's future?
I wish you could have asked me that on the 31st of October at midnight, because I could give a much clearer answer. But anticipating the possible scenarios, I'll say this. If he delivers Brexit, he'll be Prime Minister for at least another 5 years, because he will call an election sooner or later if he delivers Brexit. And I think he'll probably win it, because a lot of people who seem to think that Britain's no longer a Brexit nation forget that electoral politics is not about how enthusiastic enthusiastic you can make a certain group of people. It's about how many people you can make enthusiastic. And make no mistake, people want Brexit, not least because they're fatigued of the melee that Theresa May, frankly, ought to be named for. So assuming he gets Brexit done, and it's still anyone's guess whether he's got the bottle for it, I think he'll be in a strong position to form a working majority at the very minimum. If he doesn't deliver Brexit, I think he'll be gone with the wind.
So there you have it, a prediction that both of President Trump and Prime Minister Boris Johnson, I haven't even got used to saying that yet, may be a show that will run and run. That's a real reality TV show. I've been George Galloway. This has been كلمة. Thank you very much for watching.